I'm surprised you made it, Tom.
I made it. 2 matches.
Good morning. Sorry, good morning, Mayor, members of council. Welcome to the special council meeting. We are now live streaming, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, and good morning, everybody. Special council meeting for Thursday, July 23rd. And I'll just go through the explanations of the public notice. Due to the efforts to contain the spread of COVID-19 and protect all individuals, city facilities will not be open to the public to attend council or committee meetings until further notice. Public comments, the public may submit written correspondence regarding the agenda matters by email to clerks@richmondhill.ca. Written correspondence must be submitted by 12 p.m. noon the day before the meeting. Comments submitted will be provided to all members of council, considered as public information and noted in the public record. Electronic delegations, the public may also apply to appear as an electronic delegation by video conference and or by telephone. Applications to appear as an electronic delegation must be submitted by 12 p.m. on the day before the meeting by email to the clerks at Clerks Richmond Hill or by using an online application form found on richmondhill.ca. The office of the clerk will provide instructions on appearing as an electronic delegation. So with that, can I please have a motion and mover and a seconder for adoption of the agenda, please? Councillor Chan, Councillor Barros, I see. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof of members of council? See none, Mr. Clerk. Our scheduled business, there's 3 items. 3.1, 2, and 3. The first one is amendments to the electronic meeting procedures and is proposed bylaw 10220. So that is our first item. Is there someone that would please, I think what I want to do is, I know there's a number of questions that are in place. Can we get someone to move and second the amendments so that we do have Senator Councilor Crowley, Councilor Silovitz. All those in favor that we move forward on this one? Okay. Now, I'll go back to, we have Mr. Pirelli as mover. Was that how I did it? Councilor Silovitz, yes. Councilor Pirelli, any comments on the amendments of the electronic meeting procedures that's before us?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to move the recommendations. I think it's appropriate at this time, gives us the flexibility to do that which we need to do in order to advance the business of the city. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Councilor Silovitz.
Sorry, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, no, I'll second this. I think that we have this is very necessary, and especially in the times that we are living. And I just would like to make a couple of comments about what is in front of us, and that is, sorry, I just need to access my notes here. So with regards to, if I may, through you, Mr. Mayor, to perhaps to our clerk or to our CAO, with regards to proxy voting, can you please explain, can you please confirm for me that that would only be other members of council who would be permitted to have that proxy, or is it anybody?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I have not spent a lot of time reviewing the amendments as they were just passed, but I can confirm that one of the amendments says that if council were to choose to implement proxy voting, a member of council could only appoint a member of the same council to act as their proxy.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I wanted to make sure that we knew that and it's on the record. Thank you. And then my second comment is that I am chair of the Accessibility Advisory Committee, and we'll be having our next meeting. We had a meeting last week. Our next meeting is in the fall, and we will bring it to I had a discussion yesterday with the clerk, and we will bring the matter of holding electronic meetings for the Accessibility Advisory Committee on a more regular basis, because they are the one committee, I believe, that this really does serve a huge purpose. So I'm very pleased about that, and I want to thank the clerk for bringing that forward. Those are all my comments. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, no problem. Councillor Chan, are you? No, I'm sorry, it looked like your hand there. Councillor West.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the report. I will support the report and the recommendations. I do have a couple of questions, though. I would like to be on record as saying that, obviously, given the circumstances that we're under right now, having electronic meetings is by far the best way to go, and it is absolutely necessary. But I also would like to be on the record as saying I really do hope and expect that our council and councils across Ontario, I guess, would also be as quick as possible to get back to live and in-person meetings as we possibly can, because I really do believe that while the conditions under which we're operating right now are necessary, they're not ideal in terms of a number of aspects, and one of which is public participation. I really believe the public is much more easily able to participate in live and in-person meetings, perhaps with the caveat to allow the option for electronic meetings going forward. But I really think we need to get back to it as soon as we can, it being what we normally would have seen. I do have a question, though, about the rationale why we're even talking about proxy voting. Forgive me if I'm missing something here, but can somebody, I guess a staff person, explain to me what do we have to benefit by offering proxy voting? I can't think of a circumstance in the 7 years that I've been on council that proxy voting would have been necessary or advantageous. So I'm not sure why, although I guess it's an option under the new changes to the legislation, I'm not sure why we would pursue that. So can somebody please enlighten me?
Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm not actually proposing that we entertain it. I'm proposing more that I report back on the changes to the legislative framework. The government of Ontario had made at least a few public announcements about this provision, and it flows from the same Bill 197, which amends the procedure bylaw rules. So I'm just proposing that I'll report back. I didn't want to open up discussion or even propose that we start talking about it. It will be ultimately up to council whether you want to entertain it when I report back and explain what the parameters are in more detail.
Okay, that's fair. And if this is beyond the scope of this meeting, I could respect that. Although I guess my point in bringing it up right now is that I'm still, after hearing the comments, not sure why we would bother doing it. And if it isn't something that's necessary, then I don't know why we would ask you, Mr. Clerk, to spend any of your time. I'm sure you've got lots of things on your plate right now in bringing that back. So, I mean, I'm happy to leave it as it stands and wait for the report back. Having full information in front of us is something that I obviously value, but in the interests of, if we really don't have anything to gain by doing that, then I'm not sure why we would even go through the process, but I'll leave it at that, I guess. Mr. Mayor, if I could just ask one more question, I guess. On the second page of the report, the highlights are listed as that will continue to allow electronic council and committee meetings as needed after the declaration of emergency under the EMCPA end. But in the following paragraph, it also suggests that that council members can continue to participate in electronically in a meeting after that ends. Can you clarify what the intention is? I assume that once we have the opportunity to get back to normal, we would take it. We wouldn't necessarily automatically continue with the electronic meetings as they stand.
Mr. Mayor, that's actually correct. So the way the proposed rules are structured, it will, at least in the short term, continue to apply routinely to the meetings for the points that you raised in terms of the situation is such that in-person meetings are not entirely practical at this point in time for the health and safety reasons related to COVID-19. Once all those restrictions are lifted, because there are physical restrictions in the building that are going to dictate how long this lasts as well. But once all those restrictions are lifted, it'll then be up to council to determine whether it wants to allow members to continue to participate electronically if, for example, they weren't able to attend in person a particular meeting. That's something that'll be decided after the fact.
Yep.
So if these changes that we're going to be making take
No.
effect,
We will
then
be discussing, not making. That's what he's trying to explain. Sorry, go ahead.
no, actually, could you clarify? I'm not sure what you said there.
No, I was saying that we're working to bring forward the information, all of that. We're not discussing it exactly now. So you're right. It's the clerk is saying, I'll have all this information and be able to respond to the questions you're asking now.
No, they're actually, according to number
Okay,
A,
the
the
clerk-
council is looking to approve the proposed amendments. So if we pass this, then I'm assuming that to ask for that clarification, I'm assuming that the standard state that we'll be in is electronic meetings until such time as we change it back. It won't really have anything to do with the trigger being the end of this pandemic. Is that correct, Mr. Clerk?
That's correct. So if you read the actual bylaw, I put transition rules in there, which allow at least for the period of now until January 31st of 2021, which is a reasonable time frame, that it's going to be automatic, as it were. But if you in section 12.3b of the rules, it says after the fact, it's council by resolution that must determine whether it is going to continue to allow any form of electronic participation.
Okay, well, that's what I read when I read it as well. I'd be interested. I mean, I'll support it because obviously it's necessary right now, but I did want to be on record as saying that. I mean, I think, we do need to get back to it as soon as we can. And I would trust and hope that council will take the opportunity as soon as it's presented to do that. So anyway, thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the opportunity to speak.
Okay, I'll go first timers, Councilor Chan. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to say, echo my colleagues who spoke earlier. I also want to put a record about that. Remains to be seen what the province is rolling out on the proxy voting. But on the face of it, I also have quite a number of questions. Of course, we cannot answer today, but I just make it as a record that I do want to know more before we can act on it. And second thing is actually Council West just raised some of the things that I want to point out. I know Mayor is saying that we are not making a decision now. It all depending on what the public health medical experts are telling us when it's safe to do so, not only for us, for staff, but for the members public. But I'm just curious as to what would be the ramification on the budget perspective, because it does mention not only technology updates, but also potentially there might be hybrid meetings and then using the LPAD that was held earlier this month in the example. So again, for the record, I don't need an answer now because we don't know, but I will be wondering to what extent the impact on the budget for the coming year or even later this year. So, but it will be interesting to see how hybrid meetings can work out, maybe the LPAD examples. But through that, since it's mentioned here, Mr. Chair, can I get some comments or remarks of what the observation in the last sentence, the clerk or the staff report means? That particular LPAD meeting relating to Young Bernard KDA give us insight how it can be done. It's just very brief sort of hearing what are the insights to the extent possible through you, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. So part of the review of what happened in the LPAD is, so we put in place, staff put in place very specific health and safety protocols revolving around COVID-19 and in-person participation. The LPAD was conducted where you had persons in person in the council chambers or committee room too, but connected through a Zoom meeting for live streaming. We're still analyzing how that will work in the future, potentially for council meetings. We are also looking at how we could, as I suggest in the report, have a scenario where we're hybrid, where because of space limitations, we have some members of council present physically in the building, staff remotely, delegations partially remotely. We're trying to figure out how this will all work in the future. I would say that the LPAT hearing went very well. I know LPAT itself was very pleased with the preparation that we put in place and how we structured that to allow them to continue the hearing. But it's going to be very different for us when we move to more hybrid scenario, because we're tying into the technology in the chamber.
Thank you. I guess we're all learning. So certainly this is a new normal. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to put those comments on record, as well as trying to seek some clarification how those hybrid meetings based on the one LPAD example, hearing example, might help us in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Parley. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a follow-up question to the clerk. Can you tell us, since we've started our electronic meetings, how many people have contacted us saying that they were unable to follow the council meetings or unable to participate?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm not aware of any such contacts. We did at the beginning have some, as people got used to the new technology and the new way of displaying the meetings, or even participate as electronic delegations, there was some minor angst, but everything has run very smoothly as far as I'm aware.
The specific question, Mr. Clerk, was, for some people, for example, it's been suggested that meetings would be better served to be done in person, suggesting that some people might not be able to participate in this electronic forum. I'm fairly confident that most people, if they don't have computer access, would at least have some kind of telephone access. Have you received any calls from concerned residents who have said that they were unable to participate in this council meeting, either as a delegate or as an observer, because of the new move to electronic meetings?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I have personally not received any of those phone calls. I can't say for certain that no one has, but I certainly can say I've not received any of those phone calls or suggestions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Okay, Councilor Silovitz, second time around, and then we'll go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to follow up, I fully support what Councillor West was saying. As just a comment from myself, that as a publicly elected body, there's no question that the personal contact and the personal integration that we have when we are in council chambers with our residents, and the ability to have a public forum and all of those nuances are very, very important. And while we live through this new normal, so to speak, and we all live and work through the changes in real time, there can be no question that I think when emergency measures do eventually come to an end, and we may have to change certain aspects about council chambers permanently, but I do believe that meetings in council chambers, meetings in committee with personally, can never replace this forum. While it may be something we have to get used to, it can never replace this. So, I look forward to the forthcoming report, and I'm sure we'll have a lot more discussion then. But just one question before I end, through you, Mr. Mayor, to our clerk. Does this, when we finalize this would mean that our procedural bylaw would have to be amended. Is that correct?
That's what's being done.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Part of the motion will actually pass the bylaw to amend the procedural bylaw. So Article 12 of the procedural bylaw, which is our electronic meeting rules. The current rules talk about only in an emergency. The revised rules reflect the changes in the legislation. So upon adoption of the motion, the bylaw will be in effect.
Okay, that's very good. Thank you very much. I just wanted to make those extra comments. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Well, thank you. Okay, we have all the speakers. So can I, all those in favor of CRM? Opposed? Carries. Thank you. All right, our next item is 3.2, Lake Wilcox Residential Permit Parking.
Sorry, didn't that carry unanimously?
I didn't see all hands up, so.
Oh, I didn't think anyone voted against it, but
I'm not sure, but there was a majority did vote yes. Do you want to do it again? If you feel better, that's fine.
well, I could call for a recorded vote, but I thought I saw everyone's hand up. If someone wants to say I voted against it, it would save us the time of a recorded vote.
Well, I think if I may, Deputy Mayor DiPaolo was not on screen. That may be the cause. I don't know.
Thank you. I can handle this, thanks. But that's what I mean. So yes, it was approved.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. All right, the Lake Wilcox 3.2. I'm not sure, Councillor Barros, did you want to?
I can explain it just very quickly, and Director Steele can kind of fill in. I'll move the motion. We have a second for it, and then we can start discussion.
Councillor Perley, I see that hand going up. I'll make sure I look. Yep, go ahead, seconder. Go ahead, Mr. Barros.
Perfect, thank you. Yeah, if any members of council have questions, Director Steele is here and available, as Commissioner Joslin is also. This is a situation we find ourselves in. We're doing the pay parking for the Lake Wilcox area, and staff has done a very robust job at getting everything in place. We've put no parking in an area all around the park area, so that any stragglers that decide not to pay and park on a street will find themselves getting a ticket. However, on Sandbank, we don't have a problem with people parking on the street because of overflow parking. It's very, very close and much more convenient to park on Sandbank for the people going to the skateboard park and the basketball. So they park on the street all day. So we're asking to change the bylaw, and at the request of the residents, in fact, to have that street listed as no parking 24/7, so that the people that are parking there are pushed into the parking lot. So that's all we're doing in that amendment there.
Okay, seconder, Councillor Pirelli.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And yes, I'm happy to second this. This is, of course, at the request of the residents. And, I appreciate their understanding in being so close to this wonderful place. But again, they shouldn't have to be inconvenienced by that immense amount of traffic in front of their home. So happy to second the motion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I think it's something that needed to be done for sure, based on all those cars that were everywhere there. It was amazing. Anybody else have questions, comments, or we'll just put the motion forward? Seeing none, all those in favor, please put up your hand. Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, our next item is a place to grow. Terry Area growth plan, etc. Now, 8.3. We want to put it on the table. Is there anybody who wishes to move the motion that we have before us? Staff report. So Pirelli, yes. And is there a seconder for this, please? Councilor Barros, thank you. Go ahead, Councilor Pirelli, did you wish to make comments to start?
Just briefly, Mr. Mayor, this is basically a little bit of housekeeping. We've always known and understood that intensification needs to take place along our major transportation corridors. This is just a reaffirmation from the province that this is where it needs to take place on Yonge Street, not in our neighborhoods, not on secondary streets, not on Oak Ridge's Moraine, and not in the Greenbelt. So, Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to support it. Thank you.
Okay. Councilor Barros, any comments? Last question.
No, I think staff did a good job. Thank you.
Okay. As we note in the last part of this, it all goes to the region anyway. So on our process, questions, Councilor West.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I did have some questions about this.
Patrick's here.
There's on page 3, this will be directed to staff. I guess, Mr. Lee, if you could take this. On page 3 in the second section, last bullet point, it's talking about permitting employment land area conversions for lands that are located in both a provincially significant employment zone and a major transit station area outside of a municipal comprehensive review process. What does that mean? Conversion, I presume that means conversion to residential. Is that right?
Through the chair, that's indeed what it means. Typically, when a municipality is converting employment lands to another use, such as residential, you're only able to do that when you're doing a municipal comprehensive review or OP update or whatever you want to call it. So what the province has done is allowed for conversions of employment areas that are also major transit station areas to allow those conversions outside of an OP review. It just offers a little bit more flexibility as to when that conversion can happen if the employment area is also a major transit station area.
So that means that some of the lands around the various GO stations in the north part that are on the Oak Ridges Moraine that are deemed as employment land at the moment could then be converted to residential. Is that what that means?
Through the chair, no, actually, the GO stations in the north of Richmond Hill that are in the green belt, that's really a different situation because those GO stations are not actually employment zones. So for example, if we looked at East Beaver Creek and Highway 7, where our building is, that is an employment area and it's also a major transit station area. So what this change means is that, for example, outside of an OP review, we could convert, say, the lands at East Beaver Creek and Highway 7 from strictly employment to mixed use outside of an OP review timeframe.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I guess I'm a little bit more comfortable given that that wouldn't apply to the areas around the GO stations in the north. But I am a little bit uncomfortable. Well, I'm still uncomfortable with the idea of us being able to convert our employment lands to residential. But you're not really asking for comments in this report, though. It's a done deal that's going to the region, and we're just making comments for the I guess for the record, right?
Through the chair, yes, that's correct. So the change in the legislation, and the province has put this forth to the regions, and the region will speak to the local municipalities. And so, for example, it just gives us as a city an opportunity to convert employment lands if it's also an MTSA at any point in time, rather than just during an OP review. So, there's no immediate impacts to us it just offers flexibility for us for the future.
Okay. In the paragraph below that, I'm a little confused. Perhaps you can help me. There's different growth forecast scenarios. There's reference, low, and high. I mean, okay, I get that a forecast is just a guess, and I'll talk a bit about that in a minute. But why? What's the rationale for that? I mean, if you're going to make a guess, then make a guess. Why are they giving that sort of range? Because it is a pretty substantial difference between one and the other.
Through the chair, this is a sort of a typical way that one deals with projections of any sort, whether it's population or employment or whatever it happens to be in life. Because no one has a perfect sort of crystal ball, you often have a low, medium, and high. And I think this is what the province is doing. The reference is the one that is kind of being suggested. And for example, I think that the development industry, if I understand correctly, would rather see the high band rather than the reference or the low. But really all it means is these are the sort of anticipated targets, and whether the region or Richmond Hill gets to those targets or not depends on a whole wide variety of things, including levels of immigration and how well the economy performs and all that sort of stuff. So in the end, really all it kind of means is if you sort of pick the high band rather than the medium or low, when one is doing planning for infrastructure, roads, sewers, water pipes, etc., you try and size towards that high reference rather than the medium or low. And you have to work that through long-term capital budgets and all that sort of stuff. So to a great degree, it doesn't mean all that much. It's just sort of a future reference point as to whether you think we're going to be at the high end, the medium, or the low, and then you plan your infrastructure accordingly.
Okay, thank you for that insight. I guess, that's something you said in that in your comments, maybe is a good segue into the next point I have. I have to tell you, I'm not all that comfortable with timelines to 2051 being used. And I think if you combine the timelines to 2051 and you combine the obvious implication that most people in the development industry would prefer a higher rather than a lower thing to be imposed on land that they own, because it's clearly in their best interests from a profit point of view. And I mean, that's fine. But I think that the danger that the changes to this growth plan, the way I read it, are going to be is that if we set the bar too high, we're going to be setting a standard for development that the market will not necessarily want to take on at this present moment in time, which means that we may not get things built as expeditiously as we would think, because the market just won't accept that. That is something I've heard on a number of occasions, and I think this growth plan actually solidifies that concern that I have, or the changes to the growth plan. So just to be on the record just as saying that, could you also explain to me on page 4, it's the last full paragraph, it said, on the basis of Richmond Hill's exemplary levels of intensification and council's request to the region to consider an MTSA for the land surrounding the Gormley GO station and so on, what exactly do you mean by exemplary levels of intensification? And also, what is it meant? What is the implication that I think I'm reading earlier in the recommendations that seem to indicate that we would like to see the intensification on the Oak Ridges Moraine around the Gormley GO station, but we'd also like to see intensification in other places as well. Can you help me to understand that a bit better?
Through the chair. So what that means, the exemplary levels of intensification, the growth plan requires that municipalities have a 50% intensification rate. And that basically means 50% of your new growth is to occur within the built urban boundary, which was set by the province in 2006 in the growth plan. And our growth plan, our boundary, is pretty much, kind of as we know it. And so the idea behind that was to try and eliminate some of the urban sprawl, utilize existing infrastructure as much as possible. And Richmond Hill's done better than any of the other municipalities in York Region in terms of having new growth occur within its built boundary. We have been up around 67 to 68% intensification. So essentially, if council is desirous of seeing growth happen around the Gormley GO station, by virtue of the fact that we continue to do really well in terms of intensification, even if we expanded our urban boundary to include the lands around the Gormley GO station, we would still most likely exceed our 50% target, because we're doing quite well in terms of having new growth happen within our urban boundaries, up and down the Yonge Corridor and Highway 7, all the intensification that we've seen. We'll still meet that target even if we expanded our boundaries.
Okay, actually, that's not what I thought exactly what that meant. So I thank you for bringing that clarification. Did you want to say something, Mr. Mayor?
I was going to say your time is up, and
okay.
If you want to come in as a second.
Okay, I might want to do that. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Chan.
I believe Councillor Munch raised his hand before me. Councillor Munch, is that correct? He's smiling. Okay. Since
you want to work it out amongst yourselves, go right ahead.
Okay. So in any case, I'm just trying to say, it's up to you, Mr. Chair, but if you turn to me, I would just—
You're using up your 5 minutes, sir. I've called
you first.
You please go ahead. Councillor Chan.
Thank you. So anyway, the way I'm seeing this is actually, looks to me interesting that the mover is saying there's housekeeping issue. I mean, we are really responding to what the regional planner is asking us, basically. And then it looks to me is a number of these things that I hear what Councillor West is saying, both on the land needs assessment. I have my issue and concern as well, but this is really at the regional level. Of course, you can voice our concerns or comments, what have you. But at the end of the day, I'll be really interested in hearing, perhaps the staff will keep note of that. I'm sure they will come back to this council after the July 30th of the regional council discussion or decision on this particular land needs assessment. Now, turning to what the other thing that the other level that have control over us, that's the Ponds, Ontario. And that turns me to page 5, talking about the provincially significant employment zones. Director Lee kind of touch on is that he used examples of Beaver Creek Business Park, which is interesting because that's also the way I understand it is the province designated or talking about the lands along 404, not just Richmond Hill, but also on the side of Markham, or maybe to some extent Aurora, other places. Then they're looking at that as a provincially significant employment zone. So to the extent that any ramification for the city of Richmond Hill, through Mr. Chair, I'd like to hear from Director Lee, if possible, what's his take on that? Now, I do see that report saying staff will continue with a provincial consultation. Do we know the timeline of those consultations, when there may be a certain interim report or some kind of milestone that perhaps Mr. Chair, staff can share with us? Consultation until when?
Through the chair, There hasn't been any dates sort of set up as to when there might be meetings or consultation. Essentially, what the province is saying that sort of through the COVID-19 situation, we want to be able to sort of leverage economic development as much as we can in our employment zones. We don't have any details yet as to what the province was thinking. Like it might be some sort of faster approvals for new industrial developments or business developments or something like that. We don't have any of the details yet. We'll certainly let council in
Somebody's
on it
on
as soon as
there,
we get them.
He's turning 50.
So thank you. So basically we don't know yet, and is something is really truly in the
He's
air.
one of those
But I do understand depending on
He's
what
one
the
of
province,
those rare
depending on the
cases.
province take of
We
it.
just- Can we just wait 1 second? We've got somebody's voices in here. And it's mixing with your discussion, so.
Sorry, Mr. Chair,
No,
there's
you go
something
ahead.
to do.
Carry on. Somebody
Okay.
else was live on their mic here. We were just trying to get it shut off for you. So go ahead.
So are you,
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, are you saying I can carry on or no?
That's what go ahead means, yes.
Okay, anyway, I think it's really up to what the province, what the next move is and set up the timetable. So I think it's fair to say on the record, there's still a lot of unknown in here. So all I can say at our level, at the city level, I hope that our staff, I'm sure, would keep us appraised of what's happening at the region, which at least we know what would happen, hopefully, after July 30th in the province. Please keep us know what's happening, because the province also seems to be a very grandiose plan on Invest Ontario to be created. And so, you know what? It might completely change all kinds of local planning in some way. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And as I said, this is basically something the region is just say, hey, what do you think? But a lot of things are not controlled by us. I think that's the reality. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Munch.
Good day, thank you. I just want to start with a few questions. June the 18th, 2019, we passed a motion at council in regards to, it was actually Joe DePaula's motion, Deputy Mayor there, in regards to the key development areas and expansion of Newkirk and Gormley. And I'm wondering why the recommendations aren't reflective in that. It is in the report as mentioned by the councilors, but why aren't those recommendations put forward?
Go ahead.
Through the chair to the councillor. So with respect to these changes to the growth plan, they speak to the land needs assessment, which is essentially, how much new land do you need to grow on sort of outside of your current urban boundary. So this report certainly does speak to council's direction with respect to a desire to see development around the Gormley GO station. When we get back to Newkirk, Newkirk's already in our urban boundary. So there's nothing to expand there in terms of the urban boundary. It's already there. The only question around Newkirk maybe is around how much of it, might be converted into an MTSA and how much of it stays pure employment area. And that's something we can look at through our OP review and are indeed doing. But the changes to the growth plan they only impact sort of new growth lands outside of the boundary, and Newkirk's already inside our boundary, so it doesn't impact it.
So why aren't we communicating to the region on a regional corridor and with a metro links in the provincial plan with regards to major transportation hubs? Why aren't we consistent in sending this recommendation? If that's true, and I agree what you're saying is true, but if you look at, for example, our recommendation, are you specifically saying that the Gormley and Stouffville lines, for example, I'll say Stouffville, but the Bloomington area, I don't find it consistent. And I'm thinking that if we really are committed to the motion that was put forward, not debating the motion now, we're not going back to where we did, last year. Because there's gonna be a follow-up question to this. So I just want to make sure, I want to hear that from you again, because I've got another
Sure.
follow-up. Go ahead.
Yes, through the chair to Councillor Munch. So this particular report and this change to the growth plan, once again, only deals with lands outside of the built up areas of any municipality. It doesn't deal with lands that are inside the built boundary. I mean, we as a council have sent our direction to the region with respect to Newkirk and Gormley. But this report only deals with the lands outside the built boundary, and Newkirk's inside the built boundary. So I wouldn't feel that we're being inconsistent because the region or the province doesn't want to hear about stuff inside the boundary in terms of this change to the growth plan because it doesn't apply to it. We'll continue the message to the region that you mentioned from June of 2019 in the correct forum. This is a different forum.
So on June the 18th, the resolution states that staff be directed, and I quote, that staff be directed to communicate to the region municipality of York that Newkirk Road and Stouffville Road GO stations should be included as major transportation state areas in the regional intensification strategy passed by council. So I'm wondering why in this report here, when we look at our recommendations, that's not clearly articulated. I appreciate you're saying we're going to include it someplace else, and we've already sent a report there. As it relates to this recommendation, if you're going to say on the one side that the region of York, when allocated the region's share of the growth plan's forecast population and jobs of lower tier municipalities, duly account for considerable growth potential of Richmond Hill afforded by impending Yonge Street subway extension, by completion of the bus rapid transit system along Yonge Street and Highway 7, and Richmond Hill's GO stations. And then in B, specifically point out, or the staff's recommendation to point out that the regions undertake a regional land needs assessment, duly account for how Richmond Hill's exemplary intensification levels would facilitate designation of lands around Gormley GO station as an MTSA. Why are you specifically saying one when the motion before makes it clear? I would say to you that if we're going to be committed, we should say clearly, not, oh, we also included in this document. And so you want to make it easy for everybody to say, this is the commitment of what we're saying, and we want everything that we're committed to be clear, so there's no further discussion or roundabout or how we're going to go forward. If that's what we're committed to, great. If it's not what we're committed to, great. But I find it not clear because we've got a motion. You also said you're going to be including it in the OP. Put it in.
Okay.
Why aren't we doing that?
I want to step in, Patrick, if I can, because I know there's a meeting at the end of this month at the region with regard to those very things that we put into the region. So that's the region dealing with the areas that are going to be dealt with in some kind of changing way. If some will be done is just exactly as you stated it, Councillor Munch, was the fact that that's what we added the region to do when they bring forward all of the other ones. And believe me, there's nine municipalities out there that are looking to move around and change their uses on properties and do everything there. So that really doesn't have anything to do with at this point in time with the province saying this is a growth plan of ours. We're giving it to you, and here's all of the things that we can do. And I think, Patrick, I'm not a planner, as you know, way out of that key. But the point being, these are two different things we're dealing with. The questions that we were dealing with Councillor Munch, as I understand, they're going to the region, and that's all. And I believe it is the end of this month that they're going to put them all on the table at this point.
Because
on those areas that are already in place, as I say, they're already in the growth plan. They're already in the other areas. That's why they've taken it, quite frankly, and just said, we're dealing with the with a growth plan,
So
not,
we as a,
not on individual sites.
so we as a lower tier municipality are saying to the higher municipal levels, meaning the region
Yes.
and the province of Ontario. So we can wait for the province to drive it down. What we're saying in our motion of June the 18th. And in fact, we had the chair, Roy Emerson, and we had the planning party
Yes.
from York Region also present. And we made it clear during that meeting where we were at. And
Not,
I want to make sure that that we as at our level are communicating, because what the province is asking is they're saying, local municipalities, we're looking for you to communicate to us, and we will take that. We at the province don't want to dictate to you. We really don't want to do that. We want to see some leadership at the local level.
that's what I'm trying to point out. There's two things happening. And that's it. So what we've sent to the region has not been dealt with by the region at this time. So
Yeah, but
I'm
we are-
putting in on your time, and I'm apology, but that's
No,
what
I'm okay.
it is still there, sir. It is still there, going at the region, waiting for them to deal with it and many others that they have from other municipalities.
So I just want to be clear that we all are under the same page, unless people want to change or have a debate about other things we've done. We don't want to have this kind of, yeah, it's kind of there, but isn't.
No, it-
Because on that same level, one of the concerns that was also raised was just two more points. So on May the 21st, 2019, I would like to have this clarification, because there was a statement made that, well, these are kind of benchmarks and they're forecasts. So I kind of want to know, when the statement is made that we're in Richmond Hill exceeding our forecast numbers, I would like to know specifically, how are you quantifying that we've exceeded those forecast numbers? So Patrick Lee basically said, and I'd like to know, where are you getting that? What is the quantification towards that statement that we have exceeded that? And I'm specifically looking at the Watson report of May 21st, 2019. Is it your position that we've met those criteria as set out as the Watson report?
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
Just one second. This is a proper, I believe, a proper question to Patrick, because it's dealing with.
I just wanted to ask a question, Mr. Mayor, for clarification.
Okay, go ahead.
What time on the 21st was that motion made? I'm looking through my notes. I can't seem to find it.
It's, we had a meeting of the Watson report.
Well, perhaps.
I can send you my excerpt and of the
If you
report that was
could,
done. So
Council,
we were given,
That would be helpful if you could send that.
we were given a report by Watson from
Okay, well,
staff.
Councilor Pirelli is fine if you give him that information.
Okay,
Okay, now,
send it to you now.
Mr.
Go ahead, Patrick.
Lee, can you answer that distinction, please?
Okay. Through the chair to Councillor Munch. So what I was speaking about was the intensification rate, and that's the percentage of development that happens inside our 2006 built boundary versus what happens outside of the built boundary. It's not a measure of pure population growth. It's just a percentage of how much growth is happening inside our built boundary versus in, the more greenfield areas. And we've been doing better than other municipalities in the region. It hasn't got anything to do with absolute population growth. It's just a percentage that is intensification versus the percentage that is like new greenfield development.
Okay.
So do we ever correlate what the Watson report has advised us that the direction of our municipality is going in order for us to meet the provincial guidelines? So in 2019, when we go, if we're going to spend the cost of hiring these consultants like Watson, who when at the time said that he handles all the urbanization of Ontario, and that he's quantifying us as it relates to the regional and the provincial plans in 2019, that is now being expanded upon for Richmond Hill. So I say to you that if the 2019 report, and I did send that to you, Carmen, if you take a look at that outlier, as well as 2016, by the way, and all we do is keep pumping it forward. My question is are we meeting our
Yes.
local plans, i.e. 35%. Are we meeting our forecast with Watson? Are we correlating planning with that report? Because it's very important for us to communicate to the population that when you look at that report that was issued, that was passed by council unanimously, and we look at, for example, we approved in 2019 that we are expecting planning to put 1 crane a year in the sky in Richmond Hill for the next 20 years. So I don't know
That's-
about you, but I haven't seen it. I didn't see a crane last year. I haven't seen a crane this
We
year, a
have,
new
we
crane.
can answer the question, I believe, because we need to move on to other speakers, please. So go ahead, Patrick, you can answer that point.
So in terms of, there's a difference between the intensification rate and the pure population growth. So our planning is certainly attempting to provide as much opportunity as possible to meet our growth targets, but the market has to respond. I think York Region in general is a little bit behind in terms of growth, the whole region, including Vaughan and Markham and Richmond Hill. Some of that is due to considerably more growth happening in Toronto and Peel than was envisaged. They're kind of sucking up a lot of the growth. But you know, things ebb and flow between municipalities in terms of market preference and location and that sort of thing. We still, all we can do in terms of planning is provide the land, give it the designation, allow it to grow, but the market has to respond to it, and we don't have much control over the market itself.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Thank you.
So just
We're way over 5 minutes, okay? I've got other speakers, we can come back.
I'll go round 2. Okay, so I'll do a round 2 then, that's fine.
Deputy Mayor DePaula, did I see your hand go? Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I think Mr. Lee has summed it up really well. The whole point of the provincial growth plan exercise is to limit expansion into sensitive areas. It's to control the urban boundary and to force people to build inside an existing urban boundary that they create. So what we have in Richmond Hill is we're doing better than anyone in York Region. We're doing better than most, and it's simply the case that we don't have any new places to grow. Markham does, Vaughan does, even Newmarket, but almost all of our development is within that defined urban boundary. Now, I think what's the case that's very well made in the staff report, and it's important. It should give Councillor Munch some ease of mind, knowing that what Richmond Hill is saying, what our staff is telling the region is we're doing such a good job remaining within our boundaries. Please allow us to expand in the tiny remaining settlement areas that we do have within Richmond Hill. I do want to clarify that Councillor West had referred to Gormley as Oak Ridges Moraine, but there is a settlement area, and that's the only thing I've ever referenced within the Gormley GO Station major transit station area. There's a settlement portion there, albeit small, but that's my only intention to take advantage of that for Richmond Hill. And you know, we're doing an excellent job in maximizing the few opportunities that we have. Our planning fits in ideally with the provincial regulations of transit supportive growth and transit corridors. And you know, Richmond Hill is doing a great job. I support the report that's on the floor, and I'll tell you, the region is getting it. They do understand the position of Richmond Hill, and they are really making a good effort now to accommodate us. And we're doing a good job here, but as was mentioned, the region has to change some of their process to better serve York Region when it comes to planning, and they are doing that, and they're particularly concerned in assisting Richmond Hill in its efforts. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Just a point I want to make too, when we started this process here, the background on page 3, it says June 16th, 2020, the minister has amended the growth plan, take complementary actions regarding on the growth plan land needs assessment. So they're bringing different things to the table to us too. So, and that's why it all ends up at the region. And I think there's two specific areas that are being dealt with. And okay, with that, Councillor Silvas, did you wish to speak?
I did. Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. I just want to make a comment that first of all, thank you for the report. Very, very good to read. I have a comment and then a question. I urge council, and of course I know our staff are very aware of this, to always remember that the Oak Ridges Moraine is one of Ontario's most significant environmentally sensitive landforms. And we must always keep that forefront in our mind. It's not just about the development of this area. I understand the discussion around Gormley Go and it being an important MTSA, no question. But the Oak Ridges Moraine and the Greenbelt must always be protected against overdevelopment. And I will always shout for that. So I just wanted to get that on the record, that we always need to be cognizant. And I know that our policy department is, but we must always be cognizant of that. It's so important, because once we lose it, it's gone. It's it is a major bio ecosystem that we can never, ever lose. And once we do, it's gone forever. And it does protect our water. So with that said, the only question I would like to ask to you, Mr. Mayor, to Patrick, is I imagine that more of this discussion will also come as we move through our own discussions with regards to our revised and amended official plan. Is that correct?
Through the chair to Councillor Silvas. Yes, indeed, that's correct. In terms of the order of things, in the fall, we are going to see the results from the region of the land needs analysis. So they've got the new methodology that the province has given them. They've got to run a pile of numbers over the summer. They will release those numbers, and there will be numerous conversations between regional staff and local staff to understand what sort of direction they're going with expanding urban boundaries in the region. We'll know a whole lot more in the fall.
Okay, thank you very much. And the reason I asked that is because we got no public comments on this. And no delegations or any emails or any kind of communication that came through from the public. So by saying that on the record, it's just to assure the public that should they wish to comment on something like this, there will be more opportunities as we move through the process, going into the fall and maybe the winter. So I just wanted to bring that to the record, because I think it's very important, especially as we work in a Zoom environment and we're not in council chambers, going back to the beginning. So that's really all. This is not just about development, it's also about the protection of land, and that we must always remember that, as far as I am concerned. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councillor Munch, did you wish to add something on there before we move the motion?
Yeah, I just think it's important for members of council. I did send the notes to Carmine Pirelli, and I'm sure that the regional representatives, the 3 that we have, are aware of this because it came out of the region. Yes. And you look at, so we're all very clear, between 2012 and 2017, York region, and I have all the GTA. I'm just going to compare York region for a moment.
Just keep it
so York region is 50% below its growth forecast. So yes. Between 2012 and 2017, we were expecting, for example, $560 million a year coming into our revenue. We got 300 million. So we're $260 million a year times 5 years, or $1.3 billion short in the region, and Richmond Hill is a portion of that. And our Richmond Hill growth, which is why when I compare where our forecast is from Watson, which meets our regional and provincial guidelines, and I'm wondering if our staff is looking after and saying that our consultant that we hired and we paid for and that we approved, if we're saying that those forecast numbers, and I look at those numbers clearly as to where they were, and I evaluate that, I'm wondering, is this simply a guideline? Well, if we're supposed to get 2,000 housing units a year, of which 500 of those 2,000 housing units, or 25%, are to be high rise as per our budget a year. And I look at how we're actually achieving that, whether, I'm not saying I like one application or not application, simply as a whole, every year that we do not achieve our budget from 2019, if we say we're going to pump that forward into 2020, does that mean that the 2020 numbers are 2020 plus what we missed in 2019? And how, when applications come forward, are we quantifying that? Or are we simply saying, it doesn't matter if we don't meet our 2019 projects, because if we don't get our capital budgeting, then down the road, and that affects our financing and our staffing level. Because for me, when we say we're going to approve 2,000 housing units, but it's important for us all to make sure that the finance department and our forecast department and our economic development people and council are all in the same context. If on the other side we're saying, yeah, we'll do these discussions, yeah, we'll send these reports forward, yeah, these are guidelines, it really doesn't matter. Then what happens when we have a population growth and we don't meet our housing supply needs? We haven't approved for whatever reason. If we have not approved our housing supply needs,
is there a
the
question to
population
ask here, or are you just telling us?
No, I'm listening to when I hear the terminology of, well, these are simply guidelines, because I think it concerns us in how we're doing, how we're growing.
Mr. Lee, can you add to that? And then we're not going to.
I'll try through the chair. I certainly understand Councillor Munch's concern about, sort of budgeting and planning for infrastructure, and we budget and plan accordingly in relation to need, and population growth drives that sort of need. So one of the biggest challenges, for a planner anywhere is, how quickly are you going to grow or not grow? And you need a really good crystal ball in order to do that. But all I can sort of say is that from a budgeting process in relation to, building infrastructure that we need to support growth, we're always watching, sort of where we're at. And, if we are seeing the growth happening, we budget the money to build the infrastructure, get it built, etc., whether it's parks or roads or sewer pipes or whatever. And if the growth isn't coming, then obviously the DCs aren't coming in and we can't build that sort of stuff. But at the same time, if the growth isn't coming, we don't really need the new pipes or the new parks or whatever, maybe quite as immediately. So it does kind of move in lockstep. And I'm not sure there's necessarily a big problem in terms of not meeting one's growth target. Other than it just makes it difficult to plan for infrastructure if you start to grow slower than you anticipated. The other problem is if you start to grow way faster than anticipated, then you have the opposite problem of not having infrastructure ready to meet the growth that's coming. So it does move in lockstep and we have to watch it carefully.
So we spent the York region spent $500 million in Richmond Hill alone on a bus rapid transit system that they're implementing by the end of 2021, based upon the 2012 to 2017 growth plan that they put in place in 2010. Here we are 10 years later, and we have not met those benchmark targets as put forward in the Watson report. The numbers are quantified clearly as to what the forecast was and where we are. Yet when we put infrastructure in place, such as the bus rapid transit system of Yonge Street, and we have not met our growth targets for that, then that means that the cost, there's twofold problems here. As it relates to the wards 4, wards 2, and wards 5, when we have an area, for example, Weldrick, to Elgin Mills, Bayview to Young, that's older in nature, that has a 50-year life cycle for sewers. And those houses were built in 1955.
Okay.
Well, it matters because our growth of intensification and our growth by the Gormley, and as we're going these plans forward, and we're intensifying as per our expectation of intensification, then our infrastructure ages. So if we are having a 50-year life cycle, right now we're already 30% beyond our life cycle expectation of 50 years for the entire area of Weldrick to Elgin Mills. It's a very big concern when we started having, like we did earlier this year.
Counselor, I'm sorry, but you're
Again,
five
just say,
minutes. So
each department,
we are not alone in this. If for the members that also go up to the region, we know that everyone is in the same position at this point in time. And the region is suffering big time for lack of funding. So it's not new, believe me, and we're all trying to work our best at getting us to a point. And then, of course, OPED came in and we're doing it differently. And then also there's lots of things happening that we were not able to look at from 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Those things aren't happening. So I'm going to put this in as a question as to that can be answered later. If there's other questions you have, just contact the staff, please, because I think we've learned what we need to know at this point in time on this basis from the amended growth plan that the province has put in there last month. So can I call, oh, sorry, Councilor Pirelli, sorry, go ahead.
Just to wrap up, Mr. Mayor.
Yep.
Thank you. I do want to thank Councilor Munch. As we can all see, he has all of the statistics at the ready for all of us to absorb, and I want to thank him for that. He's very passionate about it and very knowledgeable, and I want to assure the local councillor that we are very well aware of what's going on. The region has a debt that I call a front ending of infrastructure projects of about $2.9 billion. I think, Mr. Mayor, you'll confirm that more or less. And that's because we have advanced the infrastructure projects in anticipation of A, the subway, B, the bus rapid transit line. And so you're absolutely very correct. It's a stark reminder. I guess sometimes we need that, Mr. Mayor, so that we can forge ahead and continue to approve these projects, because we do need those DC charges in order to finance the infrastructure that's already in place. So as Director Lee stated, we got to move in lockstep, and it's like a chess game. You know, all the pieces are moving, and we got to anticipate moves that are coming down the road. But we're all speaking the same language here, just from different perspectives. And I just wanted to thank Councillor Munch. Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to move the motion and vote at this time. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. All right. For this item, all those in favor? Opposed? See none opposed. Carried unanimously. Thank you. We now have, as we have a council meeting bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council on this meeting bylaw 103.2. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councilor Pirelli, Councilor Chan, all those in favor? Opposed? Opposed, and the same mover and seconder for adjournment. All those in favor? Thank you, everybody. Good to see you again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.